Okay, guys. So we are honored to have here one of the people whose life story is the most amazing, the most exciting, the most unique, the most. I could go on and on with these superlatives, but I think it's better for you to hear from the mouth of the horse, as they say. Nah, but not a horse here. It's just a phrase from the mouth of a very special person, a very good friend, okay,
Yes.
whose company I enjoy now twice a week, which is a blessing. Uh, and again, I could say all kinds of amazing things about his life story, his life journey, but I think it's better to hear it from him. So, Chaim, we
Yes.
are all ears and we are all yours. And if there is any English term you're not sure of, ask me. You should know, guys. Chaim speaks Hebrew, French, Spanish, and probably a few other languages and English. So, if he needs some help with a technical term, I'm here for you, Chaim. And Italian, maybe even Latin, I would guess, and reads Greek and all kinds of other things, I'm sure. And you'll see during today's discussion how come he is so gifted and talented and what brought him to this point. And Chaim, again, if I have not introduced you properly, you're more than welcome to add whatever you want to add. Guys, Chaim lives in a town that is not far from the birthplace of the prophet Amos and the burial place of Herod the Great. So it's very important people around Chaim. Yeah,
Yes. Oh, Nathaniel, um, all the time when I see you and when I listen you, I have inner smiling because your words, your spirit is give this feeling, and I think it's an opportunity wonderful to work with you and together do that.
thank
Yes,
you very much.
I want to give you thank you, to say you thank you for meeting me to talk about my life. I want to say forgive me for my English, but I start to expose this story, very special story.
Right,
If you can over two image, please.
sure. Okay, yeah. So we're moving on to the next slide. And Chaim, you can ask for forgiveness, but I'm not in a position to give it. You once were, but today no longer. So I cannot
Yes,
absolve your sins. Not in that profession, but you
yes,
once could, right? So there you go.
yes. This is my grandfather and my grandma. They are married in 1940. Is the start of the World War, and they from a family from Romania and from Belarus. My grandfather is the unique survivor to the pogrom in Belarus, and he going to Iași in Romania, and they arrive in Paris, and all the family meeting in Paris, and uh, if you give the next image, and they start the war. My grandfather, it was a very special person. It was a champion of BR, and the Germans uh, meet he to come to the championships in Berlin in 1936.
Okay, so let me clarify. So even though he was Jewish, born in Belarus, went through Romania, ended up in Paris, because he was a pool champion, they had no other option than to let him participate in the 1936 Olympics. Is that the Olympics or?
I don't sure if it was the Olympics, but it was a championship world.
A world championship. So
World
even though he
championship.
was Jewish, he was at that
Yeah,
moment, at that time, he was a French Jew.
yeah, and he represent France. And in this occasion, you can see what is the ambience. In 1933, the Nazis go in
Right, you can
power.
see the very
Yeah,
infamous swastika in the background, and
exactly.
you can see Juif here.
Yeah,
I
and
don't speak French, but so I don't know what Juif means, but I'm sure for the Nazis understood it. Yeah.
yeah, and this occasion was very, very important. Why? Because in this occasion, uh, a friend of my grandfather explained what was B, and he say, you need to go out to Paris. And all the family refuged to the south of France. You can go to the next image. And they arrive in this place. The name is Perak. And in Perak, it was a very, very little town in the middle of the street, yes, between near to Paris and the south of France.
So that's Paris, and here is
Yes,
Toulouse, and that's the road between Paris and Toulouse, which is an important road, right, in France.
yes.
And it's a very small town right on that road. This is the
Yeah,
road.
you can see the town. It is a street every day the Germany's over. And it was a town of 200 peoples. And my family was 50 Jewish over the hand of 1942 until the end of the war. It
So
was a
they,
miracle.
right,
Yes,
so they took refuge in the village between 1942 and 1945. Even though it was a small town of 200 people, 50 people, 50 Jewish people were concealed by that small village, small community, which knew it would suffer grieve and serious consequences had the Germans, who were passing every day through the town, know and reveal the fact that they were concealing Jews.
yeah. And the people live in the scare. And my father born in the middle of a blood. Why? Because in the I say that in Hebrew, and Nathaniel maybe translate, because for me it's not easy to say that. אבא שלי ברחמים של סבתא שלי, החוט טמבור חתך לו אצבעות וגם את הרגל, והיו צריכים לנתח את הילד שהוא
Mhm,
היה
mhm.
בן כמה חודשים,
Right. So,
6 חודשים.
let me translate. What Chaim is saying, Chaim, by the way, next you can say that I see that some of the people here are understand French and Spanish. So whenever you want, you can either revert to those languages. But if you said Hebrew, I'll translate. The umbilical cord was wrapped around the part of the hand and the foot of his father when his father was born. So at a very early age of few months, few days, he already needed a series of operations to take care of his limbs, which were born, which had defects because of the umbilical cord.
Yeah, and after he received 70 operations in the feet, and this was very, very important in the life of my father. This is my father, and he is his grand brother, and he can play football or play with the children. And what he started to do, he started to painting and start to reading first books, after big books, and after Bible bibliothèque. I don't say.
Yeah. Basically,
Yeah.
biblioteca, Bible is a
Bibliotecas
library.
enteras.
Library. Library.
Library.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when he grew up,
It's basically the same thing. Biblioteca comes from the Greek
yeah,
word for book, and library comes from the Latin word for book. But it's the
yeah,
same thing, right?
biblos.
Right. Biblos versus libus, right?
Yes. And in these drawings, you can say, see, my father, when he grew up, he asking himself, how is possible God exists, and all this suffering in my personal life, suffering in the life of my people, and he don't understand how this can to be this uh, incoherence or this okay, this problem, cognitive problem. And when he found his family in and opened his shop, it was antiquer in Normandy in France. One day a woman go in his shop, and they start to talk about God, the existence of God. And my father say, I am atheist, I am Jewish. I think the religion, many people using that for manipulate the people, but I think everybody is free. And the woman say, you know, God is love, and if you want, we can talk about that. You say, okay. Overing this time and with this discussion and this conversation, my father say, sorry, it's not with arguments. If God exists, I need to see Him, I need to hear Him. And the woman have a good reaction and say, it's true. And my father, for he, it was a shock. And he say, how can I talk with God? How can I hear? And the woman say, it's very easy. He gave a new Godspell and the Bible, and she say, simply talk with God. And he say, I don't know to talk. We never talk about the religion or the prayer, because the war was a traumatism and a trauma. And she say, simply talk with him. And with this day, every night, my father start to talk and say, if you exist, you're welcome. It was in the month of July, and he arrived the month of September. And in September, he lived a very strong experience. Just he can to explain his experience. But he say, of this day, I can have adopt about my existence, but not about the existence of God. And he understands something very, very deep. God say he to be a bridge between the heaven and this world, between the souls, but speciality between the Jewish people and the church. For he, it was a shame, because the church, it was the symbol of the killers of his people. I know it's very hard words, and I say sorry if it's kind of choking, but it was what we think in this time. And in the prayer, he received a vision, and it's an intellectual vision. I need to explain what that, because it's a term, a theological and spiritual term. It's not with the eyes or with the ears. It's a very strong experience inner. And when you have this experience, what you understand is exist. And after many years, when my father remembered this experience, he said this experience is actual, it's real. You don't know how to live that. And he decided before to go to Israel. If you go back to the image, you can see my father in Israel with my little sister, with Sarah. Yes, exactly. And but in Israel, it was a very hard time. It was 1982. It was a big inflation. The people are running speedily to buy when they receive his salary, because in 2 hours, maybe the value of the money go down.
Yes, yes. In the early 80s, guys, Israel underwent crazy inflation, a little bit like Germany between the wars. We had a moment like that. They had to replace the currency, and inflation ran crazy. It was good for people who had mortgages because they could, if they had foreign currency, they could pay the mortgage like peanuts. But it wasn't good for the economy, and it was very, very difficult until they stabilized. The whole economy went through a rough patch, and they had to stabilize the economy by taking drastic measures. They had a unity government, and it was very difficult. Again, I was not suffering because I was not yet born, but
it was a children's.
Right.
Okay, and the project was to live something similar of what was in France. When God revealed in the life of my father, start to come in his shop people, many people, atheists, Protestantism, Catholics, Jewish, arrive in this shop, and they talk about God. And the project was to do that in Jerusalem, to open a shop of antiques too, and maybe a coffee shop, and to start to receive the people. But the time was very hard, and my mother went to the divorce, and my father lived an experience of God behind, God disappear. It was very, very difficult for him, and he decided to come back France, to come back to his office, to give money to the children's. And my mother going to Barcelona. And in this time, when I come back in Barcelona, I was 10 years old. And my mother is not Jewish. He decided to put the children in the school, in the Jewish school, and he do Shabbos, and kasher.
Okay, so let's clarify the picture at the moment. You're 10 years old. You're living with your mother.
Yeah.
In Barcelona.
Spain, yes.
Barcelona, Spain at the time, and your father is in France?
Yeah.
Okay, and he keeps Shabbat, he keeps kosher, and he decided that you would go to a Jewish school in Barcelona?
Yeah, the children's.
And how about the children went to a Jewish school in Barcelona, and your mother kept Shabbat and kosher as well?
Yeah.
Even though she wasn't Jewish?
Yeah.
Okay.
And in this time, I feel very connected with the people of Israel, because I was 2 years in Jerusalem, and I feel the Judaism, and I decide to do the circumcision and to prepare myself to the Giur. The Giur, it's the Passover to the Judaism for a man who his mother is not Jewish.
Conversion. Yeah.
The conversion.
Conversion into Judaism. Just a second. What age are you at the moment that you decide?
13 years.
So at the age of 13, you decided to go through conversion and to go through circumcision as well.
Yeah. And when I was 14 years old, I discovered the word, because it's the time of the children going to the high school and going to the institute. And it's an experience of freedom, very, very strange for a child. And I decide to discover Europe. I start to.
Just a second, Chaim, but did you go through circumcision?
No. Yes.
At the age of 13.
Yes.
So alongside, instead of bar mitzvah or with a bar mitzvah?
No, I don't do the giur. I do the circumcision.
Oh, yeah, just for fun, you say.
Yes.
Not for conversion, it was for fun, the circumcision. Okay.
No, not for fun.
No, I'm just kidding.
Yes, I know. Why I decide not to go full in the giur is very simply. It's because coherence. I start to move in Europe in circles of artists, and I say it's not compatible with the commandments. Mm-hmm. And I say, if you want to be a Jew, you need to live לפי המצוות.
According to the commandments, right?
Yes, according
to the So you thought, or you felt, that artistic lifestyle and the artistic circles are not incompatible. They are not compatible with living according to the commandments.
Yes, I want to do a precision. Is not in self, is in current, is the circle who I am feel and I am know it not work.
Oh, I understand. So it's not intrinsic to the art or to artistic people, but rather to those artistic people you wanted to hang out with.
Exactly.
Right.
For example, my first journey, it was when I was 14 years. I going in autostop in tram from Barcelona until Amsterdam.
You hitchhiked at the age of 14 from Barcelona to Amsterdam. I want to tell you that if you were to be in Israel, it's not so surprising. You know, I have nephews, they do that. But in other places, it's, especially I would say in North America, if you would tell people in North America that at the age of 14 you did that, it's probably...
It's crazy.
Crazy, right.
Yes.
Right. So from Barcelona to Amsterdam, I wanted to just say that Ishmael did his circumcision at the age of 14, right? So they're close enough.
Yeah.
And you know that the rabbis, they say that Ishmael would come to Isaac and said, listen, I am better than you because I chose to be. I was already a grown-up when I decided to circumcise. You were 8 years old. You didn't choose it. Right.
But you know what say an answer of Yitzchak? He say, yes, you do that. But if my father say me to give the life, I give the life. Is why was the Akedat Yitzchak.
Right. So while Ishmael was willing to give in to circumcision, Isaac was willing to sacrifice himself. Right.
Yes. And it was to be.
Right.
Yes. And when I was 19 years, I arrived to the full down. It was a circumstance of my life very hard, because I was in not good ambience, live in the night and sleep in the day. And I decided to do a stage to a sculpture in a monastery in France. I arrive in this monastery and I start to crying and to do order in my life.
And that's already Toledo, right? That's not the
Yes,
monastery.
these
Right.
these pictures is few years after, and you can go back to the
It's
Toledo
such a
because
beautiful
yes,
picture, right?
yeah,
Why leave it?
because it's very important. When I finished this year of sculpture, I decided to go to Toledo to visit my father. And now you can come back to the image before. My father all this time decided to go in a monastery, and in the monastery he decided to found in Toledo. Here you can see the kings of the monarchs of Spain. Here he met the Pope, Jean-Paul II.
Yeah, John Paul II.
Yeah,
That's King Juan Carlos, or
yes,
yeah, Juan
King
Carlos.
Juan Carlos,
Right,
exactly.
is that the king now? Today it's
Yes,
Felipe, or right?
yes. And here you can see the Cardinal Prima of Spain, the Cardinal of Toledo. Why my father arrived to Toledo? It was 1992, and it was the memory of the 500 years of the expulsion of the Jews in Spain. And the Jewish community organized a big concert and arrived 3,500 Jews, many rabbis of all the world, and the city of Toledo come back the keys. It was a symbolic gesture, but he gave again the keys of the city. And my father feel in this place is the place to live. This bridge is why you can see here a bridge. This bridge is the bridge until the Jew quarter of Toledo. The story of the Jews of Toledo, it's to talk about that in a seminary of 1 year in the university, because it's so rich, but we can't talk in that.
Right. So the Jews had a great history in Toledo, and generally speaking, in the Iberian Peninsula. And in the end of the 15th century, 1492, and then 1497 in Portugal, they were expelled, or they had the option of converting. But even after they converted, there was it didn't stop there, and Torquemada and the whole Inquisition. Yeah.
And my father talk about the cardinal, his view. He say it's necessary to be a sign of love, free love, between the church, or between the Christians until the Jews. I want to see one of the drawings to explain this vision.
Sure. Which one? The one of love? This one?
I don't see. Yes, yes, it's come to be arrived.
Do you want any other one? I can put whichever one you want.
Yes.
You can tell me this. You can tell me the slide number, and then
אני לא יודע איזה מספר, כי אני לא רואה את שלי, אם לא, אני לא רואה את שלך.
זה?
Okay, I start to explain this picture. Come back in the before, please.
אוקיי, אתה יכול להגיד לי איזה תמונה, ואני פשוט תתאר לי ואני אשים מה שאתה רוצה. יש פה רק 3, זה והשלישית היא זאתי. אתה רוצה את זה?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Yes. Okay, my father talked about this cardinal, and he say it's necessary a bridge, a sign of love, true love between the Christians and the Jews, because all the story of the salvation is a love, history of love story. Here in this image, you can see Adam and Eve, they going to the fruit, and is it the tree know the goodness and the badness? And here you can see Cain, Havel, death, and Adam and Eve see the consequence of this fault. This is the sacrifice. And an angel go of the fire and the street of Sodom and Gomorrah. He have a yellow star who the Jews need to have in the time of the Shoah.
Where is the star? The Star of David, the yellow Star of David. I cannot see it.
Here. Yeah. I continued. And this is the woman are the symbol of the Shekhinah. The Shekhinah is the feminine presence of God. Go with the people. Here is the people go down to Egypt, and is a symbol of the misericord, the loveness of God for these people. And here you can see the Western Wall and a Jewish do the prayer of Shema Israel. Listen, Israel, God is one, God is unique, and you need to love God. And he convert in the text of Jesus in the Gospel, and he say to love God and love the man. This is the two commandments principle of the law. And he go on the head of Adam, and this is do any reparation. And here in the wall you can see the prayer of the Shabbos, the woman star light here, and the menorah. This is Eliyahu Hanavi, Elias the prophet, and here is the book of the Torah. All the story of the salvation is in the Torah. Here you have the eagle. The eagle is the symbol of the spirit. And here you have the temple of Jerusalem. And the people arrive here.
Guys, Chaim, let me interject. It's a minute. I see I'll tell you the story, which I told Chaim already. His father showed the pictures. I saw the pictures before I ever knew Chaim. I went with my kids. To Jerusalem. We did like a 2 days tour, me and the boys. My oldest two boys. The oldest one is 15 and a half. The other one is a bar mitzvah in few months. And we went to Jerusalem, and we went to the great synagogue in Jerusalem. And next to the great synagogue, the pictures of his father were showing. I'm not sure this one was showing.
This one, no.
I don't think so because this. But anyway, I saw the picture, the drawings, and I was stricken because I knew that they are so filled with symbolism. And I said, it's an amazing thing. I've never seen something so loaded with so much symbolism and so beautiful and so interesting and such a beautiful drawing. Now, when Chaim told me his story, and when I saw the drawings, I immediately said, yes, you showed it there in the great synagogue, next to the great synagogue. And he said, yes, because it was kind of, it struck me, I was stricken when I saw it with the beauty and the depth of the imagery and the symbolism. So I remembered the drawings very well. And so immediately as he told me, I said, oh, I know these images. By the way, guys, note, we can spend at least an hour talking about the imagery of each of these, but again, trying to connect here, that was the stage to connect the Hebrew Bible with the New Testament, starting with Shema Israel, and taking the allusion to it from the New Testament, and putting the Torah as one scroll here next to Jerusalem, the wall and everything, and putting the grace, the idea of chesed, grace here, and Shira Shirim, love, the imagery of pomegranate, of the 7 species, the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and so much imagery and symbolism packed in each of these amazing drawings. And the style reminded me of kind of Leonardo da Vinci style.
Yes. Leonardo da Vinci liked to drawing with sanguine. The sanguine, it's a red.
Sanguine, like blood.
Yes, it's the same of blood. Is pencil, a red pencil, do with the terra rosa.
Okay.
And I want to finish the explanation. If you see here, you can see little children, and he see his book, the book of prayer, and he sees something his father don't see, and everything don't see that reality. If you see here, you see a big face go up of the wall, and this big face is the face of the Messiah, because this prayer, this this reparation in the love of this sin was from the egoism, and it was just the love can repair that. Why I explain you this drawing? Because I want to come back to image of the cardinal. In the image of the cardinal, you can see the conversation between my father and this man, and he say, the unity is not the uniformity. The real unity is the complementarity. How God created the woman and the man different but complementary is need to exist between the Jewish people in his vocation and between the Christians. And the cardinal understood that, and he say, I want you come in my diocese and you do in a foundation. If you continue it in the image, yes, continue it, please. Oh, yes, again.
This one?
Yes, continue it, please. I want to show the synagogue. It was one of our monasteries. Yes, this was the synagogue. It's exists today. It was the oldest synagogue after the synagogue of Prague in Europe. He built in 1398, and it was Yosef ben Shoshan. It was the treasury of the king Pedro el Cruel in Toledo, and the cardinal confied to my father the responsibility of this place, and in this place,
which is in Spanish known as Santa Maria la Blanca.
Yes, it's the name today because it was built in the synagogue, look, and a mosque, and transformed and church.
Right, so it's originally built as the Ben Shoshan synagogue, but influenced by the fact that the Iberian Peninsula had a lot of years of Muslim dominion, so it was affected by Islamic architecture, and it was transformed into a church, Santa Maria la Blanca, and so the white Santa Maria, you can see why white, and so it represented kind of this reconciliation or interfaith dialogue, or interfaith history, at least.
Yes. When my father received this responsibility, before it was very scared. He say, you in the world you have the example of the Carmelitan nuns in Auschwitz. It was a shame for the international Jewish community have a monastery in Auschwitz. And my father think maybe it can be a shame for the community Jewish, international community Jewish. But after he say, but if God want that, who I am to stop that? And he decided to prepare an exhibition with 70 drawings. The drawing I show you before, it's a drawing to 4 meters to 2 meters. It's enormous drawings. For example, here is the drawing of Ruth and the King David and Moses. He prepared these drawings for this exhibition. And we start to do prayers until Jewish and Christians and everybody, here you can see that, and the people participate to these prayers for Yom Kippur, the day of the expiation, for Hanukkah, the day of the Maccabees.
Right. They know. Everybody knows Hanukkah, so it's the same in every language. Hanukkah.
Yes, Hanukkah, and for Purim. If you want, we can see one of the drawings of the Queen Esther. If you continue at the drawings, maybe.
Yes. Let's see if I can find Queen Esther.
Yes.
Here. No, just a second.
Is it prior in
no.
Santa
Before
Maria la Blanca? Yes.
I don't think you have.
It's okay. It's
no,
not
but you have Hanukkah here, maybe.
Yes, maybe.
Maybe it's Hanukkah, but you have a lot of candle lightings in other.
But it's in the Cathedral of Toledo.
Cathedral, right? Just, here is the Hanukkah.
Yes, this is Hanukkah. This is Hanukkah.
This is Hayim.
Yes.
Hayim, we've heard so much about your father and the art. I want to hear about you. So you, how did you become? When did you, and how did you decide to become a Catholic priest?
Yeah. The 3 first years when I joined my father in the monastery, I don't know what God wants about me. And I asked him, what do you want of my life? And he never gave me an answer. And I understand one day a big happiness when I think to be a priest. And my father say me, if you want to be a priest, you need to study many years in the university. It's in Spain is 6 years, and a master. It's 8 years to be a priest. And I start to study, and I understand it is my rule. And I go in the monastery and was a monk and priest. And all these years, 28 years, we are work to be a sign of love, free love for Israel in the Christian world. This story arrived in his end and in his beginning.
So why did you live? Why did you stop being a Catholic priest, and why did you decide to return to your Jewish roots alongside your father, who also left the monastery and became Jewish? What led to that transformation?
Yes, all this time, when the groups of Jewish people arrived to visit the exposition in the synagogue of Yosef ben Shoshan in Toledo, they asked me, why you stay here? Why you don't come back in Israel? Because you look more Jewish about a Christian. And I say, my heart say, to come back to Israel. But I know I have a mission here to fight, encounter the anti-Semitism in the church. But in 2020 arrived the Corona, the COVID-19, and all the activities suddenly they are stopped, and is revealed our working is arrived to the hand and to the stop. The cardinal, it not was the same cardinal meeting the people are in the monastery reveal and not good feelings, and my father and me understand our work is arrived to the hand, and we decide to come back home, to come
So
back in Israel.
basically, the changing of the cardinal, COVID-19, and the realization that your mission in Toledo came to the end, and you have to continue your life journey back home. You have to return to Israel after having been in Israel for 2 years at the beginning of the 80s.
Yeah.
So
the project was I started a doctorate in Spain, and the project was to living full this doctorate in the University of Beersheba. I was an investigation between the mystical people in the 16th century, St. John of the Cross and Santa Teresa de Avila, his writings, and comparison with the book, the principal book of the Kabbalah, is the book of the Zohar. And the project was to do with that and a doctorate. But when I arrive in Israel, I feel a very inner and deep changing in my heart, because I feel the same we are start to feel when I was 10 years old. I feel Jewish. I feel with a big love, and I don't want to leave this love just in idea. I say 28 years, I talk about the love of Israel to Israel, but now I cannot to marry it and take in my arms a woman and in my arms the people of Israel. Before I say I can talk about the love of Israel, now I can have a child in my arms.
Wow. So basically, you said it's about implementing that love in the deepest way. I can become part of it, and I can, and that is by returning to your Jewish sources, and your father also.
Yeah, and one of the principal ideas I feeling is the power of something very basically in the Judaism, the unity. God is one, but this unity is not just a unity in a number unity. It's the unity between the good and the bad, the light and
darkness,
and the darkness, the unity of the spiritual world and the material world, the unity between what you think and your heart. You can join that. And I know in idea is exist in the Catholic world. I talk about the Catholic world because it's the word who I know. I don't know others, but I know in other Christians, this reality can exist in the idea. But to see that in the people, in the day, in every hour, in every still of life. I just see that here in Israel. And it was for me an experience very, very transformative. And all the time in the beginning, I don't know who and how continue my life. And I ask to God, what do you want of my life? One day, I understand God, it was an inner understanding. The same of God say me, but what do you want? No, ask me what I want of you, but see in your heart what is your deep desire. And I do something, teach me my father. He say me, when you need to take a very dramatic decision, you can close your eyes and put in your hands the two options and to see what immediately you feel. If you feel peace, if you feel happiness, if you feel life, if you feel love, it's a good direction. And I do that. I put the life who I have before in the right hand and the life of Judaism in the left. I close my eyes and immediately I see light, peace, happiness, love in the people of Israel. And now I decided to start my real preparation to the conversion. And it was before 1 year. If my name before was William of Santa Teresa de Jesus, William de Santa Teresa de Jesus, Padre William de Santa Teresa de Jesus. Now my name is Hayim Hadar Eliyahu. In this drawing, you can see the rabbi put the talit on my father the day of his circumcision. It
How
was
old is your father?
my father, 18 years old.
80 years old. Not quite like Abraham, but not too far.
Yeah, but you know, it's right. The 8th day you do the circumcision.
8 day, 80 years. You know, same.
And this is on a video. You can put the video a few seconds if you want. And it was a very happiness experience to come back in our country, in our people, and in the commandments of God. This rabbi is the grand הנכד של בבא סאלי.
He's a grandson of a very famous mystic rabbi from North Africa.
כן, לא צריך להמשיך.
Yeah.
Yes.
So this is from the day of your father's circumcision.
Yeah. And the next, you can see the day, the same day, we are doing a festivity. You know, it's very funny for me because in the Godspell, you listen many times of the happiness in the איך אומרים, סעודה?
In which, you know, depending on which context.
In the weekend, in the heaven.
Okay. Like in the meal, supper, festivities, what, you know, depending on the context.
Yeah, in the Godspell, the Godspell talk about many times of the festivity in the heaven, or when a soul come back to God. And what is very strange in my experience in the Christianism, you don't see these festivities in the day, but you arrive here and you see big families with big children, and all the weeks you have people married, you have people with the Brit Milah, you have people in the Bar Mitzvah, and all the time you have festivities. And the people every Shabbos do the festivities, and the people dancing, and the people singing, and the people are very happy. And in this drawing, you can see my father, he meeting the friends, and we are singing and dancing and
on the day of his circumcision.
Yeah, and the same day of the circumcision. Okay, and now maybe it's the last drawing. You can see after the conversion in the study, Nathaniel and I, with a group of 40 persons, we are learn to be a guide.
Guys, you know, we're taking a tour guide course, and yeah, and I enjoy the fact that Hayim is also taking that course. So together we enjoy, you know, the course and each other's company and many other great guys.
This is in the desert when we do a visit, and in this wonderful course is amazing course. You do 1660 excursion in all the country, and you visit, and you know the knowledge of the history, of the archaeology, of the geography of it's very, very complete with zoology, with it's amazing.
Yeah, they get to suffer from me. Hayim, they get to suffer from me. Believe you me, they know I love this subject. Every opportunity to talk about history, geography, the Bible, for me, mainly Jewish history and all of that. It's amazing, and it's great to have you come here. Hayim, I want to open the opportunity for people to ask you questions, because you have such unique life story, and also I want to send a link for people who are interested to get some of the artwork of your father, which is amazing. I already said. So if there is a way, send me the link, and I'll send everybody, anyone who wants to get. But guys, if anyone wants to ask a question in French or in Spanish, they get preference. Jerry, how about your Spanish? What's up with that? You know, William, I was by Jerry in Texas, and it's a Spanish-speaking community. So
yes,
yeah.
Así que habla usted español.
Yeah. Okay, but yes.
Poco pero mucho.
Poco pero mucho. Entonces es muy español, sí.
Bueno. La palabra que dice es celebration.
Yes.
This is the day that people wait for Jesus to return on a great celebration, but the Jewish people celebrate every week.
Yeah.
It's true. Yeah, but in Spanish, not in English. I don't want.
And I think it's why it's so important to return to this reality, because the celebration, the happiness is for everybody.
Yes. When I always say, Jaime, ¿tú estás casado?
No, todavía no. Espero muy pronto.
Oh, okay. Está esperando. Okay.
Sí.
Okay. All right. I asked him if he was married, and he says he's waiting.
Yeah. If you know anyone in Israel, guys, we're trying. Yes, Susana.
Hola, bienvenido. ¿Qué piensas sobre Jesús ahora, ya que has regresado a Judea?
Bueno, sí. Voy a ser muy sincero. La verdad es que no pienso en Jesús. Y eso es muy curioso. Me sorprende a mí mismo. Porque pienso, una persona que durante 28 años, hablando de una forma muy, ¿cómo decir? Muy sencilla. Por ejemplo, una persona que durante 28 años se cepilla los dientes de una manera, no es lógico que de repente se cepille los dientes de otra manera y nunca vuelva a cepillarse los dientes de esta manera. Lo digo porque no solamente he creído en Jesús, sino que he creído de forma muy profunda. He sido sacerdote y he sido monje. Y le di mi vida y lo hice de todo corazón. Ahora, es verdad que mi infancia hizo que mi relación con Cristo fuera muy en la fe. No sentí nada, no vi nada, no oí nada. Y para mí Jesús en este momento es algo que sencillamente no forma parte de mí ni de mis pensamientos. Ir más lejos de cara a este pensamiento, yo estoy convencido, y eso es el motivo por el cual interrumpí mi doctorado, que mi pensamiento tiene que madurar.
Oh, a bit of English. I got some of it, guys, but I'm sure I'd love to get a little bit more. So the question was, what is Jesus to you now? Or yeah, and I got some of the words, but the general idea, if you could clarify in like 2 English sentences for those of us who don't speak Spanish.
Okay, I say it's very curious. The question is what I think about Jesus.
Right.
And I say, for me, it's very curious experience. Why? I was 28 years priest and monk. And I do that with all my heart and with love, fullness love. Today, Jesus don't do any part of my thing or of my field. And I say it's very strange because if you see something 28 years do an action, how suddenly you don't come back to this action? It's something very strange.
Mm-hmm.
Something, for example, walk to have a style of walk, to walking on the street. How suddenly he walk differently. It's very curious. But for me, it was an opportunity to come back to what I was feel when I was 10 years old. You remember? I say all the time when I was child, between the 10 until 13 years, I want to be Jew. And this is come back to this feeling.
Mm-hmm. By the way, Hayim, you should know that people are here from all over the world.
Wow.
You just had a question from Texas, a question from Ireland. I see a hand from the Emirates, right?
Wow.
Diana, are you in the Emirates, right? Now?
Salaam alaikum.
But originally from India, now in the Emirates.
To Indian. I have a friends. This night they going to the India, to the north of India.
He's from the south, though.
Okay.
Dias, do you have a question?
Yeah, one question. So actually, I am unable to attend the beginning part of the class. If it is possible to share this class in our WhatsApp link or something, WhatsApp.
We'll see about it. I don't know yet. People who are registered will get the link for the recording. So yeah, if you're registered, yeah, you don't worry, you'll get a full link. To make a long story short, Hayim was for 28 years a Catholic priest. Now he is Jewish, and his father is a great artist.
One more point, sir. One more point. In the synagogue construction is based on the tabernacle or in any other principle?
Are you talking about Santa Ana La Blanca or any synagogue?
No, any say it's a common plan. Any, for example, any of the architecture structure based on in tabernacle.
It's complicated a little bit, but not a lot. If you come, maybe in a different day, we can talk about it, about architecture of synagogues. It's a big discussion. A little bit connection to the temple, right? But not a lot.
Okay.
Not a lot, a little bit.
But your ask question is very good question, because it's very interesting, because you know synagogue is from Greek word to reference to the man, to the unity of the people.
To the people assembling.
Yes. And if you see the prior, the mystical people do a reference between the different parts of the prior to the go inner to the temple. And you have few buildings represent that, and it depends of the times of the constructions, and different temple don't have this concept, but it's very interesting.
Right, very interesting. Maybe we should do a meeting about the structure of synagogues. It's interesting. We'll have to bring someone who's an expert on that and maybe have a conversation. We'll think about it. I saw another question. Another hand was Leonard.
Yeah, hello. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, and I can see your name both in English as well as in Arabic.
Yeah, I'm a student of comparative religion. So my question is like, what's the salvation that you hold, or what the Judaism over to you about the salvation that you hold in Judaism? Because as I know, the Temple Mount is the center of every ritual in Judaism, but the Jews themselves, they can't even access the Temple Mount. So how can you become a Jew or doing your Judaism ritual when you have no access to the Temple Mount? That's the question. Thank you.
Yes.
Very interesting.
Yeah, it's not easy to answer this question. I try to do that, not in the comprehension of the theology of the Judaism, because this is you can read in book. I want to talk about my experience. All the time when I was a monk, I was very deep conscience how it's important to rebuild the temple. Why? Because the temple is not the building.
Sorry to interrupt, but your voice is really not really clear. Can you make it louder?
I try to talk more. Okay, now you listen me? Yes?
Yeah, it's so much better now.
Okay. What I say is, in my personal experience, when I was a monk, I have to a conscience of the Judaism, because my father is Jew, and he learned me the Torah and the mysticism of the Judaism. In the Judaism, and I was an very deep conscience how is important to rebuild the temple. And the temple is not just the building. The temple, it's a relationship between God revealed in this word, but visibility, and not just blessing his people, but blessing all the world. I am convinced if we do an investigation about how big was the blessing, the material blessing in all the world in the time of the Temple of Solomon, I am sure it was very, very interesting, because the service of the temple is the service, it's the manifestation of the full relation of love between God and his people, and God with all the nations. This is my personal experience about that. And when I was a priest and a monk, I was with a deep conscience. When you do something seriously and do everything, and a little thing or a big, all this, if you live in the correctly, in the relationship between heart, head, and spirit, and God, you do a rebuilding of this temple. Now, after my conversion, this thing is a little bit changing. Why? Because all that I live in a spiritual form, but not in the material reality. When I do this conversion, I understand the first, when a man married, in the Judaism, we say the Torah is not just a thinking, but the Torah go down from the heaven and have his materiality in this world. Is the first reality. The second reality, when the people live in the unity between the spiritual life and the material life, he do a connection between the heaven and the world. And this connection do a reparation of the disorder of our sins. And the fifth, I am sure, if the people understand how is a blessing, how is a happiness for everybody to live in this direction. We are different, we have a different personality, but we have a power of complementarity. I think everybody wants to build this. I don't know what is the form of this build. I don't know if it's material with stones, or if he have another form. I don't know. But what I know is not a pure concept. It's not a pure idea, spiritual idea. It's a reality concrete. I don't know if it's an answer for your question, but this is my experience.
Leonard, if I may add a little bit, your question is a very fundamental question, and it's not just limited to conversion. The fact that we don't have a temple in the last almost 2,000 years, okay, is a question of how do you practice Judaism without a temple, okay? And this is a very, very big question that have driven Judaism to, in a sense, reform itself already during the later parts of Second Temple period, and in some aspects have formed Christianity as well, okay? Because decentralizing the idea of a temple religion is something that is characteristic of both Judaism in its current form as well as Christianity. Because if you only worship in the temple, you cannot have, let's say, Jews living in Spain, okay, in Toledo, the great Jewish, community in Toledo could not have existed if you have to have a temple in order to preserve your religion. If you have to be in Jerusalem 3 times a year, you cannot live in Toledo. Okay, but if you are able to adjust, I would say, or adapt the perception of the principles of Judaism in a way that you can put them in a suitcase and leave in Toledo, leave in Toledo in America, in Toledo, Ohio, Toledo, Spain, Toledo, Australia. I don't know there is. I'm just kidding.
No, Mexico.
Mexico, right? You can put your Judaism into a metaphorical suitcase and travel with it. You can see how that the loss of the temple shaped current Judaism and definitely shaped current Christianity. So that is a very good question, but it's fundamental and it affects many aspects of Judaism as well as Christianity, and not just the joining of Judaism. Okay, Leonard?
Yeah, the actual question is, yeah, like what you answered to me, that the connection, the relation between the Jews itself with the temple, but as what William stated, that he converted into Judaism, and I wonder what kind of salvation that the Judaism offered to him. For example, like in Islam, they have salvation by doing good deeds and doing the salawat or doing the salat and do the ritual. And for example, the other example is like in the Christian, they believe that by believing Jesus as the Messiah and the Son of God, it can give them salvation. But in Judaism, as I studied about the Judaism itself, in Judaism, they have to offer some burning offerings like the Qurban or the Korbanot in the temple for the eraser of the sin. But you cannot do the Qurban because
that is correct up until 2,000 years ago, in the sense that, so Judaism had to contend with that question, but it had to contend with that question 2,000 years ago, not just when the temple was destroyed. Remember that about 150 years before the temple is destroyed, or even more, depends how you view that, people started looking at what's happening in the temple and viewing it as illegitimate. Let's say if the king, let's take a very famous king that we've mentioned in the beginning of our conversation today, Herod, okay? If Herod can decide who is the great priest, and who's or other kings can decide what's going to be in the temple, and the temple is becoming part of the political game, and later on becoming corrupt and so forth and so on, people had to think about, okay, well, how do we practice Judaism when the temple is irrelevant for us? Because even if there is a temple at the moment, again, let's say last 200 years or 150 years, depending how you view these historical periods, I'm not getting into the details, but they had to contend with that question while the temple existed. And you can see towards the end of the Second Temple period, ideas that contend with that difficulty, definitely becoming the mainstream ideas since the destruction of the temple. And the alternatives for the bringing of sacrificial animals and offering them on the altar in the temple were central to the preservation and prosperity of Judaism and preservation for over 2,000 years. If you want to see an example, let me give you an example. You said you're a student of comparative religions. Look at the Samaritans. Okay, the Samaritans have never done that adoption of their ideas. So for every Samaritan has to come to Mount Gerizim for the Passover of the Samaritans. Do you know how many Samaritans are there as opposed to Jews?
Yeah, they're not really much, I guess.
Right. So they were not able to make that adaptation of decentralization and, if you will, compartmentalization of their own religion, and so they were not able to preserve great numbers. There were more than a million Samaritans in late antiquity, and today there are about 2,000.
Another example is that in the 70-year captivity, when the temple was destroyed, Judaism continued even in the Babylonian captivity. Daniel prayed 3 times a day. He focused on praying that what had happened to them was written in the book of Moses, and they want to repent. And so
these things that I've talked about in late Second Temple period already are rooted in the period, the beginning, the Babylonian exile and the beginning of the Second Temple period, but they became they became an everyday situation for people in the late Second Temple period, and definitely after the destruction. So your question is super important for understanding Judaism and Christianity, but it's a little bit beyond the scope. So we talked a little bit about it, Leonard, and thank you for coming and for asking the question. Where are you from, by the way, if I may ask?
I'm from Indonesia.
Indonesia. So next,
yeah, it's really far.
We're going to have Rabbi Tovia Singer, who used to be a rabbi in Indonesia. Right.
Yeah, I know a rabbi here, and his name is Rabbi Yaakov Baruch, and he is in Manado. And I guess he's the only rabbi here, I guess, in Indonesia, because, you know, Indonesia is the #1 Islamic populated country. So Judaism here cannot grow too much. So, yeah. And I think he might be the first rabbi, I guess, in the late 1,000 years, I think. Because
I'm not sure. I think that there were other rabbis, but okay, yeah, it's amazing. Thank you very much for tuning in all the way from Indonesia. Let's hear last 2 questions. Frank and then Stanley. Go ahead, Frank. Frank. Okay, then.
For your story. The question I have is, it's actually 2 parts. I assume when you went to the monastery, you were in crisis. And if you were in crisis, why choose a monastery as opposed to, say, going to a doctor?
When you receive the formation to be a priest, you study in the university, and you know the function of the priest is to follow in the spiritual life all many people. You need to know how to talk with a doctor, with a lawyer, with an architect, and to talk to simple persons. Is why you need to study and to have a good formation in history, psychology, theology, Bible, spirituality. Now, the program or the project to be a doctor, because when I going to Israel in the first days, for me it not was very clear how to continue my life. And I talked with my bishop, and my bishop suggests to continue my studies in Israel. After I understand it's not interesting to going full in this direction of the doctorate, because when I start the doctorate, in my head, Christianism and Judaism can to be together. together in the same person, in the same religion. Now, I don't think that. My understanding is changing, and I think I need to give time for to mature this thing. What is the second question?
Okay, and Stanley, the last question, please.
Yes, please. Thank you. My question may not be directly related to what you shared today, but I was always curious to understand the Jewish understanding of the temple. My understanding is coming from considering the sanctuaries from Genesis onwards. We know that the tabernacle and the first Jewish temple was honored by God because his glory came and filled the temple. And we don't see that in the second temple. So I just wanted to know if the Jews have explanation or a different treatment of the first temple versus the second temple, because the first temple had the glory of God and the second temple did not have that. So do the Jews have a different relationship or understanding of that? And the second part to it, if the vision in Ezekiel has any influence on that understanding.
Okay, Hayim, can I take it? I'll take it. I'll do it short, though.
Go for it.
Stanley,
Yes.
I want to tell you that your question is about, I would say, if I were to tell you it is about 2,500 years old, would you believe that? Yeah, this is a question that really echoes the through the book of Haggai, you know, the prophet Haggai. The prophet Haggai really had to contend with something, some similar sentiment to the one presented in your question. I don't have the time to get into the details of it, but I suggest that you read the second chapter of the book of Haggai, because Haggai, who is in the dedication of the second temple, he still has old people who saw the first temple, and they are thinking, "Oh, this is nothing. This house is nothing for them." He says, "Oh, it's like nothing to you when you look at it." And then Haggai is prophesying the following, okay? He's talking about all kinds of things. I'm not getting into the whole prophecy, but in chapter 2, verse 9, he says, listen, and I'll say it in Hebrew and then I'll translate. Gadol yihye kevod habayit hazeh, ha'acharon min harishon, amar Adonai Tzevaot, ubamakom hazeh eten shalom, ne'um Adonai Tzevaot. The glory of this house, the latter one, would be greater than the former one, says the Lord of hosts. And in this place I shall give peace, the utterness of the Lord of hosts. So the question is very old. The answer, short one, but the prophets say this would be even greater. And indeed the second house, the second temple, survived for a very longer period than the first one. So again, I know I didn't answer all of your question, but just to know that it is a very old one and was contended already by the prophets of the Bible, Haggai, of the Hebrew Bible, okay, is I guess it is a direction, right?
I want to say something.
Yes.
Hayim.
Yes. In the Judaism, we say a few thinking about the relationship with the temple. You talk about Haggai, but in the mystical vision, what is very centric is the Song of Songs. All the commentaries, the classic commentaries of the witness wisdom. He talk about the relation between Shlomo. Shlomo is, we translate Solomon, but the Hebrew say, Hu asher ashalom shelo. You can translate me.
Sure. Shlomo is the one peace, the one who's got peace, who has peace.
And the unique have that reality is God. And all the relationship between this love and the lover is the relationship between the people and God. Another commentary, very interesting, say, why David, this is your name, David Stanley, why David don't build the temple, and why Moses don't build the temple. And usually the things say because David was a warrior, and because of the blood he came to build the temple. But the inner and deep understanding of the Judaism is not what we are thinking, because the war of David, it was a holy war, and all his blood is similar to the Korban. And God say, your holiness, your sanctity, it's so big, and if you build the temple, the build can be destroyed. And because the people, Jewish, arrived to the sin and broken the commandments, I need to destroy the people. Is why I prefer to destroy the temple and not to destroy the people. Another reality very important, say, the cause of the first destruction was sexual relation, the murder, and the idolatry. This destroyed the first temple. But this reality is so hard, is easy to convert of that. The second motivation of the destruction of the second temple, it was very, very more
Subtle.
Yes, delicate, is the graciously hate. And what is the graciously hate is because you never have a motivation to hate something. I give you an example. If something hurt you, or if something takes what is yours, you can repair that. You're going to the lawyer and to repair that. But the hate is never can be justificable. And is why before Leonard asked about the salvation, is why the Judaism understand how is important to graciously love. Why? The Christianism say, or Jesus say, destroy the temple and in 3 days I rebuild it. Because he do a comparison between the temple and the body of the man. In the mystical Judaism, we have a concept about Adam Akadmon, the first man. This first man, the commentaries of the Zohar say it have a bigger of all the earth. Why? Because in this first body, you have all the souls, because he's the father of all the people. And he contains himself all the souls. The Kabbalistic men say the purpose is to reparate the disorder to the first man and the first woman. And how to do this reparation? How you say in the Islam is to do the commandments of God. But it's very different to live this obedience to the commandments in one man or in people, all the people, fully people, and in fully people and his relationships with all the world. And we come back, everybody, to the same father, is Adam. Is why the commandments, you ask what happens when destroy the temple. And is Yehuda Nasi in Yavne, he say, now what substitute the Korban is the prayer and the study of the commandments. When the man connected these 60-30 commandments with his body, and it's very interesting because it's 365, the same of the days of all the year, and 248 is a reference of the parts of the body in the man. When the man do that connection, this connection have a relationship between the man live disobedience with all the universe. In the concept Kabbalistic, this concept is the relationship between the macrocosmos and the microcosmos. And this is possible not because the man have this power. And this is very, very interesting in the Judaism, because we don't wait the salvation with exterior. The Messiah, he don't come to do a salvation. The salvation, the men have the power to work in the salvation and to build the salvation. What is the purpose or the function of the Messiah is to do a moderator, to give a beauty of life can to be recognized for all the people, because all the people see this man and say, how is beautiful this still of life. I want to live of this still of life, and is construct the unity. And of course, it's a very, very deep and large thematica.
And no doubt it's a very large theme. And you know what? Maybe Chaim come again to talk about the Zohar and the perception of Adam HaKadmon and the tree of life in the Zohar and the imagery that the Zohar uses to talk about the world. I want to say, guys, that I've added the link to the website of Chaim's father's artwork in the chat, and I will send it to everybody alongside the recording, the link to the website. You're more than welcome to open your mics to say thank you to Chaim for coming and taking the time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
For coming.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Muchas gracias.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much,
so
Chaim.
And I suggest, if you want, Netanel, one day we can focus the meeting to the art of my father.
Sure.
Explain the drawings.
Yeah, definitely. If there is a specific painting you want to talk about, we'll you can even send a small, you can send a low resolution form of it. We'll send it via email to everybody, and then when coming, we'll talk about the art itself. Sure, no doubt. We've already taken too much time from people. Thank you very much for coming, and thank you. Bye-bye, guys.
Bye-bye. God bless you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. God bless you.
Good night.